Tall Tale TV.
Of Monsters and Mushrooms by Lesley Herron. Chapter 23, Marasmius. It's hard enough to travel through interdimensional portals without adding drowning to the process. The wave of salty seawater that pushed them into the vortex seemed to have dragged the rest of the ocean along. Or at least that's what Vel thought as he struggled to keep from exhaling as he and the rest of the party were bashed against the sides of time and space in a turbulent tube slide. Lights were starting to pop in his vision, and his mechanical eye was flashing a warning which he had chosen to ignore. He could see the end of the tunnel rapidly approaching, that wreath of warm summer brown that promised arid winds, sand, and, best of all, oxygen. They were ejected from the portal as easily as if they had been the contents in the bottom of a bottle that had been turned upside down. Vel closed his eyes, bracing for the impact into the powder-fine sand. Instead, he was slammed into hard stone. This was certainly not the way he wanted to take his first breath after his saltwater bath, but he pulled in a strangled gasp of air and chanced a peek. Vel had only a moment's glance at the crumbling sandstone surface he was lying on when the others collided into him, along with a torrent of water that sent them all sprawling down an impossible incline. The water, still draining from the gateway above, threatened to drown them in a mix of ocean and mud as they impacted each landing in a giant flight of stairs. The water broke around them, depositing them, rather rudely, into the sand at the base of a temple.
Ooh, that was fun! Let's do that again!
Evan squeaked, crawling out from beneath Eric. Vel rolled onto his side, emptying the seawater from his lungs.
What the hell was that?
He collapsed backward and reached over to jab his brother in the side. Eric sputtered around a mouthful of seawater and sand. He pushed himself out of the mud to fall back into a sitting position.
Where are we?
He asked in a daze, looking around.
Is everyone okay?
Brigg groaned somewhere behind him.
I think I broke something.
He dug a meaty hand into the sand beneath him, expecting to feel a bone out of place and explain why his back was killing him.
Nah, never mind. I'm okay. It's just Attila.
As Brigg extracted the battered murk from the sand, there was a series of popping sounds as Attila's vertebrae found their homes again.
Ow, 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 ow!
Their harrowing ride through the waterslide had dumped them into what appeared to be a stone courtyard at the base of a giant tiered building. Stairs led up the massive structure to the portal at its zenith. Eric climbed to his feet, staggering around the edge of the pyramid. Spiraling outward from the structure was a sprawling, ancient, ruinous city that lay forgotten like a Zen garden in the desert sand. There were towers, effigies, unexplained structures, homes and pyramids alike, all in varying sizes and shapes. Some had yet to be fully unburied, still toting a layer of sand like a shroud. It was as if the entire city had been birthed by the desert. The temple itself was covered in carvings and statues, ceremonial gongs hanging from heavy chains, and, of course, a plethora of sacrificial tables.
What the heck happened?
Evan shot a glance at Eric, climbing onto Brigg's shoulder for a better view.
I thought you couldn't change the portal.
Attila began to crawl along through the mud towards a pile of sopping leather.
Hey, it's my hat!
Eric pulled his gaze away from the city to stare up at Evan.
It wasn't me. The portal locker still needs to be fixed before I can set locations. Someone...
Eric nodded his head in Attila's direction, less than discreetly.
Repurpose the output dial as a countdown timer. He must have changed the portal somehow when he was tinkering with it. Attila shot a dirty look up at Eric before he continued to pull himself across the sand.
For the last time, you should have said something before you asked me to fix it.
I didn't ask. Stop fighting. It doesn't matter. Don't you see? None of this matters.
Vel shot, using his one hand to wave at his surroundings. Attila managed to reach his hat, sat back on his heels, and swept it off the ground, slapping it on his head with a flourish. A bucket full of water coursed down his face, and a wet pile of fur with a single giant eye and pencil-thin legs plopped in a wet heap straight into his lap.
Ah!
Attila sprang to his feet, backpedaling hard until he hit a wall, which knocked down a layer of sand, effectively coating him in a thick layer of mud the consistency of cement. The wide-eyed critter gave an irritated coo before scuttling away, leaving a trail of water behind it. Eric looked over at Vel.
Look, I get that you're upset, but don't take it out on us. It's...
Vel pushed his hand against his brother's mouth to silence him. He was watching the critter scuttle away.
The portal didn't change. We're in the same desert we were before.
Brig scratched at a spot behind his ear, looking around.
I know we left in a hurry, but, I think we would have remembered all the buildings.
Vel pointed at the soaking wet creature.
That's one of the little poofball things. It's just wet.
Attila scooped the mud out of his face, raising a sandy eyebrow in the process.
And what? The city just sprang up in the couple of hours that we've been gone?
Oh!
Eric nodded to himself, choosing to overlook Attila's unnecessary sarcasm.
It's gotta be another instance of time dilation, like how on Earth, time moves slower than in the other world. What was hours to us could have been weeks, years, or even centuries here.
Vel cast his eyes at the ground, clenching his teeth as he did.
That explains how Alpha was able to do so much damage to our world in such a short time.
Eric ignored his brother's comment. It wasn't that he didn't have any feelings for his home. It was just, now was not the best time to be wallowing in misery. He would have to comfort his brother when they got somewhere a bit safer. He sighed a little, and then pointed up at the temple.
On our last visit, the gateway was sitting on a metal spire, a plinth of some sort. I assume that was the peak of this tower here, and the city had been buried in sand at the time. Windstorms must have uncovered it at some point.
Or,
countered Attila, trying to dig his way out,
pyramids, ancient ruins, bizarre architecture? This was clearly aliens!
Eric shot the merc a look of pure loathing. Evan hopped down from Brig's shoulder.
Okay, good, great. So, let's get out of here before that giant stone guy comes back.
Brig raised a hand. Eric raised an eyebrow at Brig, not quite sure what to make of the large man.
Yes, Brig? Not that this isn't fascinating and all, but, is the portal supposed to be doing that?
Eric's gaze scaled the pyramid up to the gateway. The portal was wobbling. Its shape was being stretched and pulled in odd directions, and it was growing.
Oh, crap! I forgot about Alpha!
Evan opened his mouth to say something, but was cut short when a terrible screeching noise destroyed the silence of the desert. The portal lurched, expanding upwards, leaving tears in the fabric of space. Eric pointed a finger at Evan.
Whatever it is, don't say it.
Eric dug the portal locker from his coat.
We just need to find a place to fix this.
Sea foam came crashing into each stair of the stone structure, cascading down into the sand, spraying them along the way. Brigg scooped up Evan before he had a chance to retort and snatched Attila from his sandy prison by his poncho.
Shut up and run! We're still in the splash zone!
What? Eric followed behind Brigg at a half-trot, Vel slightly behind him.
What do you mean?
Alpha burst forth from what was once just a swirling vortex, but now was a giant gaping wound in reality. He let out a terrible roar that shook the sand from the buildings, water still pouring out around his enormous, pulsating form. His voice boomed across the ancient sky.
You cannot escape!
Bang! Alpha smacked hard into the first set of stairs, his massive bulk forcing him down each and every step after. Every thud against the stone was met with a cry of pain or a foul curse. His body slammed into the ground at the base of the temple, and a dust cloud erupted around him like the blast radius of a bomb. Brigg peeked his head out of the only intact doorway of the ancient, crumbling domicile they had chosen to hide in.
He ain't gonna be down for long. How much time do you need to fix that portal thingy?
Eric ran some quick math in his head.
I don't know, 15 minutes?
And if Attila helps?
Probably longer.
Alpha quickly forced himself upright, playing off the ordeal as if he hadn't just belly-flopped onto a city street. He was still visibly shaken, but made up for it with the murder in his eyes.
Come out now, little ones!
He slammed his fist into the nearest building, crumbling it like a sandcastle.
And I might just kill you quickly.
He ripped one of the massive gongs from the side of the temple and hurled it like a discus, shearing a path of destruction in its wake. Brigg pulled his head back inside.
Well, you got, 30 seconds. Get started.
Are you insane? Eric glanced out the door in time to see Alpha ripping a tower from the ground and tossing it behind him in disgust. Evan tapped his chin thoughtfully. What we need is a distraction. Eric nodded.
Okay. Any suggestions?
Evan put his hands on his hips as he came to a decision. I say we feed him Attila. Hey! Attila shot Evan a wounded look. Vel was sitting at the base of a run-down set of stairs.
I second that motion,
he mumbled. Try as hard as he may, he couldn't keep his mind focused on the here and now. Smoldering fires and lifeless bodies kept drifting lazily across his vision. He sighed and pushed his face back against his knees.
Threat detected. Protection protocol level elevated. Immediate termination required.
Evan huffed. Oh, well, that works too, I guess. The ground shook as the stone giant stormed into the heart of the city. It whipped its massive staff around with a flourish, grasping it in both hands in a battle position. It reared its head back, letting out an ear-piercing screech, and began to charge. The two titans clashed. Alpha threw a wild punch, which glanced uselessly off the creature's hard surface, and received a stone fist to the gut in return. He staggered back, tripping over the tower he had destroyed moments before. The statue's remaining eye glowed red, and a beam of superheated light struck Alpha in the chest. Eric swept the sand clear from a small stone bench and placed the portal locker on it.
Attila, I need your tools.
The two went to work on the device, trying not to get in each other's way, and failing. The statue swung its staff, catching Alpha beneath the jaw and sending a spray of black ooze across the cityscape. Evan pumped his fist in the air.
Yeah! This thing might actually do the job! At this rate, we won't even have to worry about him!
An inky hand wrenched the weapon away from the monolith, smashing it across the statue's face. The staff shattered from the force, taking chunks of the Guardian's beak with it. Alpha pulled himself off the ground and used his momentum to slam into the statue, sending it sprawling on its back, destroying an entire city block.
Oh, I spoke too soon. You guys better hurry up back there.
Attila was attempting to wrestle his microtorch away from Eric.
I told you, we can't retrofit the dial that way. You need the output from the capacitors to energize the resonator.
Eric pounded a fist on the stone slab. We have to get out of here first, and in order to do that, we have to wire the device like I did when I built it.
It won't work that way, though. I moved all sorts of stuff around in there.
Brig raised his hand again, in a somewhat sheepish manner. Eric grit his teeth so hard he was surprised they hadn't shattered.
What? Can we help?
He gestured to the sullen cyborg and the tiny, anxious merc who had been giving them a play-by-play of the battle raging on outside.
Do you know anything about thermodynamics?
Well, actually...
The ground quaked, the shock of which sent several rotten chunks of roofing timber down around them.
No, I didn't think so. Be a peach and go help the statue. We might be here a while.
Eric began pulling wires from the device.
What? Like, seriously?
Brig looked out the window, his face filling with trepidation. Attila gave his friend a hearty pat on the shoulder.
Come on, buddy. We all gotta do our job here. You don't see me complaining about what I have to do. Just take Evan with you. You'll be fine.
Evan unsheathed his machete and ran from their hiding place, into the fray, screaming out his battle cry.
Wah!
Attila shoved against the unmovable mountain of a man, encouraging him to follow.
Come on! You're making us look bad,
Attila hissed, jabbing at his friend in the side to spur him on. Brig gave an overacted sigh.
I would, but, I don't have a weapon.
Phew, that was a close one. Vel pulled Scarlet from her scabbard and offered her to Brig.
Here. Not like I'll be able to use it.
He gave a half-hearted wave of his mechanical stump to illustrate his point. Brig's mouth disappeared into his mustache as he glared daggers at the cyborg.
Gee, thanks.
He yanked Scarlet away from Vel, stomped out the door, and began slowly jogging after Evan, giving his own meek battle cry as he went.
Rah!
As the two demigods battled, pummeling one another with blows that shook the earth, Brig tallied his list of options. 1. Go in, sword swinging, and get squashed without them even noticing. 2. Go in, try to distract Alpha, and be squashed without them even noticing. 3. Send Evan in, find a good vantage point, and watch him get squashed without them even noticing. Brig's mustache pulled into a grimace, and he was about to call Evan over when he noticed a fourth option. One that just might work. Or get them both squashed without the giants even noticing.
Hey, Evan, get back here. I have a plan.
Attila waved a wrench threateningly.
If you over-torque the flex-weave matrix lining, we can't access the tractor beam.
Wait, what? Tractor beam? Are you just making up words?
Eric pointed an accusatory screwdriver at Attila.
Yeah, aren't you?
Vel put his hand between the two and addressed Eric.
Before you pull your own hair out, just finish the damn thing. We still have to climb up that stupid pyramid to get out of here.
Eric snatched the wrench from Attila.
Fine. I'm just gonna patch the dial back. You can change it later to make your bomb.
Attila sighed as Eric began furiously reattaching wires.
You can't say I didn't warn you.
Brig was using his considerable muscles to drag free the massive copper disc Alpha had thrown from the remains of a collapsed tower. It was larger than he was and twice as heavy. It carved a deep trench in the sand and stone as he pulled it into the sun, where he propped it against the side of the temple. Evan tapped at it with his machete. The disc made a soft, melodic tone.
I don't get it. Are you gonna throw it at him?
I'm gonna use it like a mirror.
Not that I don't think you're pretty, but this thing ain't exactly all that reflective.
Before the tiny merc had a chance to protest, Brig picked him up around the middle and pushed him against the surface of the disc. He began to furiously scrub Evan back and forth against the tarnished metal surface, polishing away the years of grime.
Hey, knock it off!
You're gonna have to help me aim this,
Brig commented as he set the tiny merc back down. He moved behind the back of the disc and pushed against it with all his might. The edges of the gong were cutting into his fingers as he aimed it in the direction of the battle. A ray of reflected sunlight danced along the city like a spotlight.
Oh, I get it. Not bad, big guy. You gotta go a little to your left. Ah!
Evan crumpled to the ground, shielding his face with his hands.
Your other left, you moron!
Sorry.
Evan pried his eyes open.
Okay, now up.
The beam of light traveled up the Guardian and then shifted across the fighting.
How do you right?
The reflection landed directly on Alpha's face. The monster recoiled, throwing his hands up to cover his eyes from the blinding light.
Bingo!
Alpha staggered back, and the stone statue began pummeling him relentlessly. He took blow after blow, stone fist after stone fist, as he collapsed to the ground.
Holy cow! It actually worked!
Evan climbed to his feet, watching as the Guardian stood over the goo monster, raining down a punishment of stone into Alpha's face. Eric came trotting up behind them, Vel and Attila in tow.
What are you guys doing, just standing there? Quit screwing around and let's get going.
Brig peeked out from behind the massive disc.
Did you fix the device?
Yes! Now let's go!
Brig dropped the metal disc, the gonging of which rang out around the battlefield. Both Alpha and the Guardian stopped, turning to look in their direction. Brig ran nervous fingers through his mustache as the sound continued to echo back and forth across the city, the only sound for miles. Alpha snaked out from beneath the Guardian and lunged in their direction.
You are mine!
Alpha's assault was cut off prematurely as stone arms seized him around the middle in a giant bear hug from behind, lifting him off the ground. Eric readied the portal locker.
Everyone, get to the gate!
Being tossed down the stone steps, the expressway down, hadn't really highlighted the effort it was taking them to get back up the temple. It required them to help Brig scramble up one step, and then he in turn would reach down and pull the others up one by one. They continued this way until they were nearly at the top. Alpha was flailing, cursing the Guardian at the top of his lungs, but the stone grasp held him firm.
I'm done toying with you, Sentry. You will not prevent me from extracting my revenge on these insignificant gnats.
He began to push tendrils of ooze back against the statue. Tar-like fingers began to dig their way into every crack and joint the statue had to offer. The glowing red tattoos on the Guardian's body began to flicker and snuff out, one by one, the farther the ooze seeped.
Oh, crap!
Eric pushed against the others.
Go, go, go!
He set the dial to the location of the other world and watched the portal ripple and warble in its torn and beaten state. It flickered once before settling into the spinning hues of purples and blacks. Alpha's homeworld. Looking back over his shoulder, Eric saw the stone guardian, no longer glowing red, but a violent shade of magenta. Blackness swirled and stretched across its body. The guardian was shuddering, trying in vain to keep control of itself. And then its body calmed, becoming stiff. After a moment's pause, it looked directly at Eric as he leapt into the gateway beside his brother. And Alpha began to climb, stone feet sinking into the ancient sandstone steps. A single giant purple eye trained on the portal. Of Monsters and Mushrooms, an ongoing series by Lesley Herron, is a crossover fanfiction mixing her own characters and settings with a few of those created by author J.D. Wiley. She writes for the fun of devising new ways of messing with her characters and seeing just how much trouble they can get into.
Whoa. You was seriously gonna send me in there to get squashed while you sat on a rooftop and watched?
What? You already took out the Guardian once. I figured out of the two of us, you stood a better chance.
You know, you make a good point. I am pretty badass. Wait, you're going to forgive him? After that? Ain't nothing I wouldn't have done. I still say feeding you to Alpha was a legitimate strategy.
I still second that idea.
You guys suck.